This is the story of the Transfiguration. Transfigure means to transform. It comes from Latin, meaning trans, across, figura, form or shape, to change shape. And the Greek word is metamorpho, which we are quite familiar with that with caterpillars. More on that later. Metamorpho is a verb, to change into another form. Now, Luke's account of what we just heard gives a few more details. And this is such an important story that we're going to read the Bible passage again, just from Luke this time. Luke 9, starting at 28. Luke 9, starting at 28. Jesus took Peter, John, and James with him and went up onto a mountain to pray. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became bright as a flash of lightning. And two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, talking with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, which was about to bring fulfillment at Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy. But when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As the men were leaving Peter said to him, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't know what he was saying. And while he was speaking, a cloud appeared and covered them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. But a voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. I read an interesting take on the Transfiguration by Reverend Hal Shopping. He's from a church in Fort Collins, Colorado. He says, "The Transfiguration is a rather odd story, isn't it? I'm not entirely sure why it's an annual celebration." That's today. I mean, we don't have an annual celebration of the Beatitudes, which present Jesus' message in a concise form. So why do we have the Transfiguration every year? Maybe it's because it's a story of the miraculous. I sometimes irreverently refer to our observation of the Transfiguration as Shiny Jesus Sunday. Shiny Jesus Sunday, end of quote. He's right, the Transfiguration is a mystery. It's difficult to understand. A very good way to respond to mystery is to step in really close and examine the small details. Don't try and get the bigger picture. Just let the mystery speak to you. So what do we, people are welcome to write this in the Zoom, or people in the room, what do you notice in this story of the Transfiguration? There was a reason I read it twice to give you more chance to notice the details. What do you notice in the story? Well, first of all, what's Jesus doing?
Glowing.
He's glowing, but what was he doing before he started glowing?
Praying.
Yeah, he went up the mountain to pray. He wasn't trying to be glorious. He was just doing his thing. And what were the disciples doing during this shiny, what happens to them? Well, he is learning about what's going to happen in Jerusalem, and they get sleepy. Remember, we're the disciples in this story. The disciples get it wrong so much, which is, I suppose, a relief, really. But they get sleepy, and I think sometimes that is a response that we have, actually, when we're in intense spiritual environments. Our ego can't really cope when we get sleepy. So I found this beautiful prayer by David White. He's a poet that I got to play music for recently. And the poem is called "What to Remember When Awakening." Right? So imagine we're here, we're with our master, he's praying, suddenly weird stuff starts happening, we get really sleepy, but we do come to our senses. So what to remember when we come awake? In the first hardly noticed moments in which you wake, there is a small opening into the new day, which closes the moment you begin your plans. What you can plan is too small for you to live. What you can plan is too small for you to live. But what you can live wholeheartedly will make plans enough for the vitality hidden in your sleep. There's a vitality hidden in our sleep. To be human is to become visible, while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. To be human is to become visible while carrying what is hidden as a gift to others. And that's to remember the other world in this world. That is where we live into our true inheritance. You are not a troubled guest on this earth. You are not an accident amidst other accidents. You were invited from another and greater night than the one which you have just emerged. Maybe it's important that we honor the sleepiness and the stuff that we don't know, because the ideas and plans that we make are too small for us to live. I agree with that. What else happens in the story? Who are the beings that come? Moses and Elijah. Moses and Elijah. Moses was the giver of the law, and Elijah was considered the greatest of all the prophets. Now, I think a traditional Christian approach is they come to show that Jesus is the fulfillment of the Jewish scripture. Now, as an interfaith person, I find that stance not good enough. I believe that there is in the beginning was the Word, in the beginning was the sound, in the beginning was the divinity, and we resound it. Jesus is a resounding of the Jewish tradition. He was part of the Jewish tradition. He makes it absolutely come alive. But that word completion, when we have millions of beautiful Jewish people, is a little bit offensive. You can take that or leave that. But as an interfaith person, I say that he is a recapitulation. The fact that they appear shows that he is building on. He is an expression of the same light. Oh, just in case you don't know, people online and in the room, I am an interfaith minister. I'm not a Christian minister. I happen to be Christian, but I am trained as an interfaith minister. It's a story for another time. I didn't see that one coming. So another thing that's interesting about the Transfiguration was that Jesus is shiny Jesus Sunday. And that happens to Moses after he receives the tablets. He comes down and his face is shining and he has to cover his face in a mantle after that. He doesn't know that he is shining. It's very interesting. Now, something I notice in this story, because I knew about the Transfiguration through art before actually praying with the Bible passage, is that a lot of the images they're on the mountaintop and there's the disciples on the ground sleeping or looking like they're in devastation. There's the Moses and Elijah, and then Jesus is usually airborne. Have you noticed that? He's like, his feet are up off the ground. He's at least 6 feet off the ground. Sometimes he's like 60 foot off the ground. And I think that artistic flair interpretation demonstrates one of the problems that we have with the Transfiguration, which is that we stop Jesus being among us. Remember, Emmanuel, we're just in Christmas, the lowly birth. Christ dwelt among us, with us, is not airborne, lifted off the mountain, so incredibly glorious that it's only him that's shining and we just have to worship him. Jesus asks us to follow him. He doesn't ask us to worship him while he's airborne 60 foot off the ground. And I think that it's important that we remember this is a mountain. There's people sleeping. This is very earthly as well as a mystery. Let's not elevate Jesus. All right, coming back to metamorphosis, that's the Greek. To transform. There's a scientist called Bruce Lipton. He does spirituality and science, and he talks about what happens in the transformation of a caterpillar. The larva is creeping along predictably. Then one day, the whole machine begins to shudder and shake, and the system begins to fail. Cells within the caterpillar begin to commit suicide. There is a sense of darkness and impending doom. Poor little caterpillar, huh? From within the dying population, a new breed of cells begins to emerge, and these are called imaginal cells. And these cells devise a plan to create something entirely new in the old wreckage. Out of the decay arises a great flying machine, a butterfly, that enables the surviving cells to escape from the ashes and experience a beautiful new world far beyond imagination. Here's the amazing thing. The caterpillar and the butterfly have exactly the same DNA. They are the same organism, but have received and responded to different organizing signals. Now, I believe what happens in biology also happens in spirit. How come somebody like Jesus is transformed and Moses to shine with divine Christos, and some of the rest of us become bitter and inward focused and take from everybody else? Now, one thing that is clear to me is that the caterpillar cannot begin to imagine life as a butterfly, right? This happens within the right environment and the right time. That if us in our spiritual transformation, we can't imagine it, but circumstance sometimes open our heart. Often it looks like grief or adversity. Or, an amazing person moves next door. Like, I shared my office with these Aboriginal women for a month when I lived in Australia, and it absolutely spiritually opened me. Just that month with these women, a completely new way of seeing. It was a really beautiful transformation. I did nothing to deserve that. I just happened to have a large office. One of my favorite teachers is Saint Teresa of Avila. She lived 500 years ago in Spain, and she clearly describes in this book that she wrote for her nuns that the path of holiness, quite far along, involves going into a cocoon and a big spiritual transformation. She calls it like the silkworm. She's not talking about a caterpillar, she's talking about a silkworm. And she said that the conditions that it's really up to God whether we transform or not, right? But the conditions that we can bring about to make that more likely to happen are prayer. And by prayer, she meant dialoguing with God and the prayer of silence. So prayer, humbling up, really humbling up and taming the ego. And the third thing, which was unusual for somebody 500 years ago, self-knowledge. And it's worth noting that she was a nun for 20 years before she had a spiritual breakthrough in which God came alive for her in the form of a statue of Jesus that spoke to her. And when that happened, she became a big pile of mush weeping on the floor. Anyway, that's a story for another time. But the conditions that we can bring about, I think that's helpful for us it's not up to us whether we shine with divinity, but it is up to us to open to the process of transformation with humility, prayer, and knowing ourselves. So the last thing I want to talk about in regards to the Transfiguration is the shiny thing, shining with uncreated light. So we've got Moses with the tablets shining so much so that he has to hide his face in a mantle. Jesus shining, and the disciples being so overwhelmed with this, the Christ light shining through them that they basically fall asleep. But we talk about this in our society in an everyday way with pregnant women, don't we? That they shine. Is it possible for us to shine, or do we just have to look at an airborne Jesus up off the mountain way above us that we can't reach. I think we are supposed to follow, and we're supposed to temper our ego so that the light, the uncreated light of God, can pour forth. I don't think that we're able to be like, oh, I'm going to make myself shiny. I'm going to say all these prayers and Hail Marys and I'll be really shiny. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think the best way to do it is to notice and tend to the light in one another. You know that Hindu namaste thing that yoga people do? Namaste. I bow to the divine in you. I see the Christ light in you. I don't think we'll ever really be able to see it in ourselves, and I don't think we're meant to. But we can tend to it in one another. And, you know, when your brother and sister has something, you know, even if you can't see it, that you have it too. So I believe the way we shine isn't by focusing on ourselves, but attending to the light in one another. Thomas Merton, who was a monk who died in 1968, I think, he said, there's no way of telling people that they are walking around shining like the sun. I'm going to read the whole passage in a minute. He had this epiphany aha moment where he was going to a medical appointment in downtown Louisville, Kentucky. And something happened to him and he saw the world completely differently. So here's how he writes about it. In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut Street, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation in a special world. This sense of liberation from an illusion of difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud. I have the immense joy of being a man, a member of a race in which God, Him, herself, became incarnate. As if the sorrows and stupidities of the human condition could overwhelm me, now that I realize what we all are. And if only everybody could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There's no way of telling people that they are walking around shining like the sun. Then it was as if I saw the secret beauty of their hearts, the depths of their hearts, where neither sin nor desire nor self-knowledge can reach, the core of their reality, the person that each one is in God's eyes. If only they could see themselves as they really are. If only we could see each other that way all the time. There would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed. But this cannot be seen, only believed and understood by a particular gift. Wow. If we can see the divine light in others, even if just dimly, not that whole experience that Thomas Merton just had, but if we can see the divine light in others, even if it is just dimly, when we see it in others, we recognize it also as within ourselves and within our communities. Perhaps the shiny Jesus on the mountain didn't just shine with his own Christ light, but with our light too. And one thing is sure, the mystery aside, the instruction was, come and follow me. All right, I'm going to close in prayer. This is by people called The Work of the People. You're welcome to close your eyes, let the words sink in, or not. In this sacred moment of transfiguration, let us bow our heads and open our hearts to the profound mystery unfolding right before us. Beloved God, remind us that the divine spark resides within each of us, waiting to be unveiled. In this transfigured light, we are called to recognize the divine in every face, in every creature, and in the beauty of the world around us. We are co-creators in this ongoing dance of creation, evolving towards the fullness of love. So with hearts aglow and spirits uplifted, may we carry this transfigured light out into the world. May we, like Moses and Elijah, be bearers of wisdom and compassion. And may our lives reflect the love that transfigures all things. As we descend from the sacred mountain, let's do so with grace and purpose, knowing that we are forever changed by this encounter with the divine. May the blessing of the Transfiguration be upon us all, now and evermore. Amen. And here's the thing, as we sing this, it can be subtle. Our Transfiguration moments can be very subtle. They don't need to be enormous. Do you want to get up and move? That's a lot of sitting. Love, prepare me to be a sanctuary, open-hearted, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I am a living sanctuary for you. Love, prepare me to be a sanctuary, open-hearted, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I am a living sanctuary for you. One more time. Love, prepare me to be a sanctuary, open-hearted, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I am a living sanctuary for